This week, NFL Game of the Week takes a look at the very much up-for-grabs AFC East Division title race. First here in Shea Stadium, where the Baltimore Colts face the New York Giants. Then in the Orange Bowl, where the Buffalo Bills squared off against the Miami Dolphins. The situation is this. If the Bills can snap an horrendous 11-game losing streak to the Dolphins, and if Baltimore beats New York, the AFC East Division will show all three teams tied for first place with 8-4 records. But if the Bills lose this game, they are for all intents and purposes out of the playoff chase. They would then be 2 games behind the Dolphins with 2 to play. The race would then be down to 2 teams, Baltimore and Miami, with the winner of the division being the winner of this week's ultra-crucial Miami-Baltimore game, if the Colts win today. Of course, a win by the Colts is hardly a surprise anymore. This young team has won 6 straight coming into today's game, and the fact that they might very well win the division title after a 2-12 record last year has Cinderella's glass slipper slipping onto their foot very nicely, having been dropped by the Houston Oilers. So today's 2 games are critical in the AFC East Division title race. Later in the show, we'll check in at the Orange Bowl for the Miami-Buffalo game. But first here at Shea Stadium, where the New York Giants meet the Baltimore Colts in the NFL Game of the Week. The struggling New York Giants did not start well at all against the Colts. This is their very first play from scrimmage. A look at the play in slow motion reveals that Craig Morton's pitch was true, but that Doug Coder never could find the handle and fumbled the ball away. John Dutton recovered for the Colts on the Giant 33, and after 5 runs bowled the ball to the 9. Lydell Mitchell followed number 75 George Coons and number 66 Elmer Collette, who moved him out just far enough for Mitchell to fall into the end zone. This has been a banner year for Mitchell, who at last is getting the recognition that his former college backfield mate Franco Harris has received. Later in the game, Mitchell would become the first Baltimore running back ever to crack 1,000 yards rushing in a season, and he would certainly give the credit to his offensive line. At the end of his touchdown run, he went over to help tackle George Coons off the ground, then gave the ball to guard Robert Pratt to take care of the spike. Baltimore was off to a quick 7-0 lead. The Giants would have very few chances to score in this game, but one chance was set up by a pass to Joe Dawkins, whose fine run moved the ball 39 yards into Colt country. But the drive died, as would many others, by virtue of the sack. On this one, Morton is the sackee, Joe Ehrman the sackor. Brutal Baltimore pass pocket pressure was to be the key to this game. One series later, Morton again got pressure. It is not apparent from this angle, but will be revealed when we see the play from up top. His pass never got to Ray Rhodes, for Colt linebacker Stan White stepped in front and 23 yards later stepped into the end zone. Many interceptions are not the result of super coverage by the secondary, come about because of a good pass rush. That was the case here. Morton felt pressure from Fred Cook and Joe Ehrman and threw before Rhodes had cleared white zone. Morton simply couldn't wait any longer before releasing. The Colts now led by 14, but Morton drove the Giants to the Baltimore 10, where a bad break finished New York's best scoring opportunity of the game. Looking at the play from our end zone camera, we can see that Morton sent Rhodes in motion, thus moving number 59, Colt middle linebacker Jim Shyunsky, to his left. Morton had actually moved Shyunsky closer to the point of attack by sending Rhodes in motion. This would not have mattered had Joe Dawkins not popped the ball up, but when he did, Shyunsky, under a full head of steam to his left, hauled in the rebound. New York would never again threaten, though the game was only one play deep into the second quarter. They lost their last chance when they stopped the Colts cold and took possession of a Baltimore punt on the Colt 33. But on the play, Jim Steinke, number 20, was called for nudging the kicker. David Lee, one of the few real Colt veterans, showed his experience with a fine swan dive. This is the kind of mistake that you would expect the young and frisky Colts to make. But Ted Marchibroda has this young team performing like a bunch of hardened veterans. This 96-yard drive was to be a good example of their maturity. Third-year quarterback Burt Jones kept it going with 2 third-and-long plays, getting the first down with a completion over the middle. Jones next successfully handled a 3rd and 12, but in a different way. His pass to Roger Carr was slightly underthrown, and Carr couldn't quite come up with the ball. The ball fell incomplete, but when Pat Hughes fell on Carr, a penalty flag also fell, and Baltimore had another big first down. Carr was only momentarily injured. Hughes' personal foul hurt the Giants much more, for it kept the Colt drive going when they should have had an incompletion on 3rd down and added 15 yards to the drive besides. From the 1, though Brad Van Pelt, number 10, handled Collette up high, underneath, Bill Olds crept into the end zone and Baltimore led 21-0 at halftime. Trailing by 21, Morton, who was not adverse to putting the ball in the air, now had an excuse to do so, though he probably wishes he didn't. For the Colt front four, known as Looney Tunes because of their free-spirited play, soon had him assuming the fetal position. Captain of the Looney Tunes is number 76, Joe Ehrman, who had 2 solo sacks. The other 3 Loonies, John Dutton, number 78, Mike Barnes, number 63, and Fred Cook, number 72, picked up where Ehrman left off. And by game's end, Craig Morton was a little loony himself, having been put down 8 times for 62 yards and losses. The Looney Tunes, which consists of 2 third-year players at tackle and 2 second-year defensive ends, now have 55 sacks this season to lead the NFL. Only 2 events of any real consequence came about in the second half. One was the birth of a trivia question concerning Lydell Mitchell. When someone asks you what 2 players who were backfield mates in college both reached 1,000 yards on the same day as professionals, you can tell them Franco Harris and Lydell Mitchell of Penn State, who both reached that mark on the season's 12th Sunday. For Mitchell, there is the added glory of being the first Colt ever to reach that mark. A pretty fair runner named Lenny Moore, also of Penn State in the Colts, never did it. Only one thing spoiled the Colts' day. Burt Jones re-injured his ribs late in the game, but this has happened before, and Jones was back the next week. You can be sure he'll be in there this week as the Colts play what is actually a championship game this Sunday to see if they have indeed arrived in 75. Battered, bruised, and bandaged, Miami's Dolphins went against Buffalo in the second half of our double feature. In consecutive weeks, Miami has lost both Bob Greasy and Earl Morrall. So third-string quarterback Don Strock was to lead Don Shula's team against the Bills. For Strock, a former NCAA passing champion at Virginia Tech, it was a first NFL start after 2 years on the sidelines. And with both the Bills and Colts hard on Miami's heels, a greater pressure situation just couldn't exist for an inexperienced quarterback, or for that matter, a battle-tested head coach. Meanwhile, Strock's reaction to pressure was quickly evident when on the Dolphins' second series of the game, he directed the team 80 yards on 12 plays for the game's first score. After Mercury Morris got the offense going, Strock began a streak of 10 consecutive completed passes, spreading them around to completely confuse Buffalo's vulnerable pass defense. On this beautifully constructed and varied drive, the young quarterback hit passes to Don Nottingham, Nat Moore, Fred Solomon, and Howard Twilley. 4 for 4 in all, which brought the ball to the Buffalo 4. Here behind All-Pro guard Larry Little, Strock raced around right end for the game's initial score and the first pro touchdown of his NFL career. Miami 7, Buffalo nothing, and an auspicious debut for Don Strock. Miami's next drive was spearheaded by the running of Mercury Morris, who exploited the Bills' flanks all day long to the tune of 93 yards. When Morris had brought the ball to the Buffalo 8, Don Strock calmly took matters into his own hands by throwing to reliable Howard Twilley for a touchdown. Twilley dearly paid for the privilege of scoring and was a bit slow getting up due to Ike Thomas's hit. Thomas was charged with unnecessary roughness on the play, and a repeat of it shows why. But Twilley, as usual, didn't miss a minute of the game, and his touchdown gave the Dolphins a 14-0 lead. Late in the second quarter, after the Dolphin defense had forced the Buffalo turnover, Strock quickly attempted to cash in with a bit of razzle-dazzle. After a narrow escape, ex-college quarterback Freddie Solomon's fine pass to Nat Moore was broken up by Dwight Harrison. But the cornerback was called for pass interference at the 1, so the play was good for 44 yards, much to Harrison's discomfort and Moore's approval. With a rainbow on his shoulders, Strock struck again and hit Twilley with this second touchdown pass of the day, as the Miami lead ballooned to 21 points over the stunned Buffalo Bills. With time dwindling in the first half, Buffalo moved the ball for the first time today. But on 4 tries from the Miami 6, Joe Ferguson was thwarted, and the Bills came away empty. The hero was strong safety Charlie Babb, who probably should have had an interception here. Nonetheless, Buffalo was stopped on 4th down, and their inability to score here from in close would cost them dearly today, as the half ended 21-0. Trailing by 21 in a must-win game, Buffalo began a furious second-half rally. O.J. Simpson, completely bottled up so far, finally broke loose, and the Bills had their first score of the darkening afternoon, 21-7. However, Miami came roaring right back on the wings of Nat Moore's 42-yard kickoff return, which put the Dolphins inside the 50. Don Strock obviously was still in command as he hit on his 11th completion in 12 tries, a screen to Nottingham that picked up 17. Two plays later, with a 3rd and 2 from the 18, Strock faked to Benny Malone and took the ball himself against the flow. Strock said later he would have scored on the play if he had stiff-armed Dwight Harrison, who forced him out on the 3. Miami was forced to settle for Garo Yepremian's 3 points, but their lead increased to 17 points. O.J. Simpson was in high gear now, and he personally accounted for 31 yards to the Miami 31. From the 31, Joe Ferguson passed beautifully to J.D. Hill in the end zone for Buffalo's 2nd touchdown. Up to this point, Hill had been intimidated by the no-name defense and had dropped several passes in key situations. Now revenge was his as Buffalo pulled within 10 points of the Dolphins. Early in the 4th and final quarter, starting from his own 20, Joe Ferguson put his team in the end zone, going the 80 yards in just 3 plays. After a pass to Bob Chandler on the right side got 14 yards, Ferguson found O.J. open over the middle, and the superback did the rest for a 62-yard pass and run that put the Bills only 3 points behind with plenty of time remaining. Now, with the game definitely going Buffalo's way and the Bills highly charged, the turning point of the battle occurred. The defense stopped Mercury Morris twice on runs, the last seemingly forcing a fumble. But the whistle had blown and a personal foul was charged to Pat Toomey, number 65, who felt Morris had fumbled. The damage was done, however. Instead of 3rd and long, Miami now had a 1st down, and on the very next play, for all intents and purposes, the Dolphins ended the ball game. The man they call the bowling ball, Don Nottingham, rolled for 56 big yards to the Buffalo 1. And on the next play, Norm Bulash went over for the touchdown that put the game out of reach of the Bills. The Dolphins are a team that obviously feels no pressure. Their background of 3 Super Bowls bring to them a certain calm as they confidently await their opponent's inevitable mistake. It came on Buffalo's first play from scrimmage after Miami's touchdown, when Ferguson, trying for Paul Seymour over the middle, was intercepted by Jake Scott, the Dolphins' freewheeling safety. Scott's theft, in effect, ended what slim hope remained for Buffalo and locked up a storybook game for Don Strock. The sophomore quarterback had thrown for 2 touchdowns, ran for 1, had hit on 12 of 15 passes, and virtually played the entire game untouched by enemy defenders. The victory kept the decimated Dolphins 1 game ahead of surging Baltimore and set up a titanic matchup between the Colts and Dolphins this Sunday. First place will be the prize.